And happy early Thursday. It's Thursday somewhere in Thursday, Japan. We're recording a little bit early today here for our Razor cast, which is Reaker and Zink talking Muskies basketball. We got a special guest with us today, Dale Haarman. We'll be talking most of it. Dale from the late 70s played with the Muskies, and we'll get a lot of it. So first we'll welcome Jim to the program. Thanks for coming in. You just got back from a trip to Marquette. We'll be talking about that. How are you doing on this Indian spring day?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Just got off the field here. So, the trip to Milwaukee was a very good trip. Had a lot of fun. Just didn't enjoy that game.
Yeah, we'll get that.
It was a butt kicking.
Yeah, and we'll also welcome Dale Haarman, one of the Xavier players of the past. We punctuated his 1977 senior team a few broadcasts ago when we were working down the sevens. Dale, thanks for being here with us today, and welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. First, we'll jump into the past week before we get to our interview with Dale, which we're both looking for. If you're listening to this, and it looks like it was a long time before we got on the air, Jim and Dale were discussing a great moment, which we'll get to later, which we probably could have gone 30 minutes before we even got on the air. But we'll start with this. Basically, what we just said. Holy Al McGuire, what happened in Marquette? Nobody expected a 22-point butt whooping.
No, they didn't play well. Trayvon Blewett, of course, is not playing. They're very limited with their offensive output without him. It was National Marquette Day, of course. The place was rocking. The Golden Eagles came out, of course, I think, 19-2, 21-2. It was over before it began, and it's just one of those games we need to forget about real quick, and hopefully tonight we'll be watching them play again. Hopefully out at Seton Hall they can get back on the right track. I think Trayvon might play tonight, so we need to move forward. It was ugly. They had a freshman who's going to be good. I think his last name's Howard, Marcus Howard, I believe, had 9 threes, tied a school record. So it was just one of those nights. And Marquette's like that. When they light up the three, they can play with anybody in the country. Of course, they beat Villanova up there when they were number one. So there's not a whole lot to say. But the weather was beautiful in Milwaukee, and the festivities before the game were great and afterwards. So it was a good weekend except for that 2 hours I had to watch the Musketeers get shellacked.
And for those of you who don't know it, one of Jim's sons is a Marquette grad, so I'm sure there was more than just nice weather and cold beers being thrust around up there. There was a little trash talking between father and son, no doubt. Dale, did you get a chance to watch the game at all? Any thoughts from you?
I did watch the game, and I agree with everything that you just talked about here. It was almost like the perfect storm they were walking into. Marquette, National Marquette Day, and that Marcus Howard, I believe it is, comes out and knocks down 9 threes, and when you fall behind like they did 21-2, you can play catch up for so long, but you run out of gas, and you almost have to play perfect the final 35 minutes of the game even to get back into it. But it is one of those games where you can blame it on Sumner not being there and Blewett not playing, but you can't do that. You just have to kind of say, let's forget about it. If I'm Chris Mack, I don't even think I'll have the kids watch the tape. I said, forget it. Let's move on to Seton Hall and just focus on them. But it was a tough game. It was a tough, long game for our Musketeers.
Well, then we move on to our next topic before we get to you, Dale. We got a lot of fun questions for you to talk about your time with the Muskies. But Jim, last week you said that you thought 20 wins was going to get us into the tournament, and sadly now with 3 straight losses, where do those 20 wins come from? Tonight we got a Seton Hall team that we only beat by 2 at home. And that was with a healthy Trayvon Blewett. Like you said, he may be back tonight, but he's coming back off of 10, 12 days off. We got to host Butler on Saturday, who we let off the hook in Hinkle, but we had a healthy Blewett for that. And in summer, he scored 22 points in that game. And, of course, the Bulldogs play Nova tonight, and that could be them either coming off a big upset or a big loss to them. And then next Wednesday, that Marquette team we just talked about comes back here. We end the season with DePaul, and they're right now in the midst of, they could be in a 13-game losing streak by then. They've only got one win in the league. But, even if we count that as the number 19, where does the other one come from in this tough space that we've talked about here at the end of the season?
Well, they could win any of those 4 games, and they're going to have to win. I still think they're going to have to win 2 of the 4. They're going to have 20 wins going in the Big East and probably get a win in at least the first round of the Big East tournament. And I think that'll pretty much put them in the tournament. But here's what I want to say. This is our team now. Trayvon Blewett, every report I've read says he's probably healthy. He's probably going to play tonight. Yeah, Seton Hall's tough on the road. We only beat them by 2 at home, but that's what we got to do. The good thing is, Butler, I think we can beat them at the Cintas, and Marquette. The thing about Marquette is they do play very poorly on the road. They've had some bad losses on the road. They lost at St. John's, although we know St. John's at times can play very, very well. And they're going to have to go on the road and beat a DePaul team. But if they don't win, if they lose these last 4 games, then we might be thinking NIT or we're going to have to win the Big East. But again, as Dale said, you can't, Edmund Sumner's gone. Trayvon Blewett, I think he's going to be as good as he's going to be. This is our team, and if they can't win 2 out of the next 4, then maybe they don't deserve an NCAA bid.
Dale, any thoughts there?
Well, I agree once again with everything you're saying there. The interesting thing is that the team currently is 18-9. But there's a very negative feel about how things are going right now. If they've got the program to the point it is now where we're disappointed with 18-9 or not feeling good about the way they're playing, we should also keep everything in perspective and say, this is one hell of a program. All programs go through rough times. I was watching Virginia last night. They lost, I think it was their 5th game in a row. This is a team that was in the Elite 8 last year. So, I understand the day-by-day, what you're going through now, what the players are going through right now. McCure is thinking, do I have to jack up a few more shots? Do I have to make a couple more perfect passes? All the big guys inside, I got to get a couple more rebounds, a couple more baskets, and it just adds more pressure to them that is difficult to handle. Not many players can all of a sudden score 6 more points in a game or get 5 more rebounds in a game. It's asking a whole lot of guys. But if they can somehow just focus on Seton Hall, just think about Seton Hall and don't even start counting the number of wins, and we need this many to get into the tournament, hopefully they can win 2 of the last 4, 3 of the last 4 and get there. But it's a tough task. Big East is tough. Every game's tough. And even that DePaul game's not going to be fun when you go up there on their senior day. I'm sure it's going to be a tough one. So hopefully they can just, the old adage, take it one day at a time, and hopefully that'll get them through to the tournament.
Well, we know how they... Go ahead, Tim.
He makes a very good point, because here's something else I just read this morning, and their RPI is 17 right now. I remember years when they were back in the MCC when they were probably had 1 or 2 losses and their RPI was probably in the 30s. And we were still thinking, do we have to win our tournament, or can we get a at-large bid with such a great record? So, yeah, you're right, Dale. This program has come so far, especially since you were there.
It's definitely a lot more fun. But that's the progression of the program from where I was at when we were just struggling to have a winning season to now where, every year, every game, it's a tough opponent. I mean, let's face it, it's a lot of fun to go to the Cintas Center, watch them battle with these Big East teams as opposed to going to the Gardens and watching them play Missouri at Rolla or whoever it was. I'm not putting it down back for what it was, because that's the progression you have to take. You don't go from where we were in the mid-70s all of a sudden to a top 20 RPI team overnight. It takes a lot of time to build that. And, that's why it's good to be a Muskie fan. It's good. It's really enjoyable to watch and see where this program's gone.
Well, and that's one of the things we'll discuss with you when we get there, Dale, the difference in there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, our RPI as of this morning, according to ESPN, is 20. Their strength of schedule is 13. The VPI is down to 31. Minardi has them as a 7 seed. I got a feeling that'll drop because how if they do have a problem here the last 4 games, because the committee does take into account how you finish. I still think they're going to the dance. I don't think the NIT is in there, but you're right. You got to do it with one. But you have a lot of people out there that sound a lot like Kevin Bacon in Animal House, where they're saying, all is calm, whereas everybody's trampling them. So I hope that remain calm, all is well. It's going to be an interesting few weeks. It's hopefully they can get back on track and get them ready. But you're right. It's also an exciting time for the program, and it's given some of these kids like Quentin Gooden and Macra a chance to have to step up and not defer to Sumner and Blewett, and we're going to see what we've got the rest of the year and maybe even further down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go on to why we have Dale on today. For those of you, Dale is a dear friend of mine from my time teaching with him, and he is still at Indian Hill. For those of you who are Muskie fans but don't know your history, you should know Dale and the people from that era. Dale is a player. He played here in the Cincinnati area. He led St. Bernard to the state Final Four with 37 points in the regional finals, and they fell in the state finals to Indian Valley South, coached by Huggins, Bob Huggins' dad.
Bob Huggins' dad was a coach. Bob was their top player at the time.
Yeah. So, and then they won there in 72 and then came back in 76 and also won the state championship. So no easy feat. And, the Titans were a power back with them. Dale has been named by the Cincinnati Enquirer as the 78th best high school player in the history of basketball in Cincinnati. I think that knocks you down a little bit playing at a small school. He played collegiately, went to the SEC in Mississippi State, and then transferred back to finish his junior and senior year at Xavier, with his final year being 1977. In that 75-76 campaign, his junior year, he averaged 14.6 points and was tied for the team lead in 7.1 rebounds per game, and also led the team in free throw percentage with 76% on a team that went 14-12. Like he was saying, they struggled sometimes just to get to the 500. And then his senior year, he was the team leader in points scored with a 13.3 average, also the best rebounder with a 5.3 average, second best on the team, and was the leader in assists with 2.6. And then was another 74% on the free throw, which was best on the team. After that, Dale's done a variety of things. He's also known in the area as having coached basketball for many times, led the Indian Hill Braves to the Ohio State Division III Final Four in 1998. He coached for Kings before that. He's coached the Turpin girls. He's still a golf and was a golf coach, and I had the chance to be his JV coach there one year at Indian Hill. And he still coaches high school track and middle school cross country at Indian Hill. And, married to a lovely woman, Renee, and a father of 2, including a son, Joe, who Jim would be happy to find out spent a year on the Indiana Hoosiers squad as a walk-on. But why don't you tell us a little bit? You mentioned it earlier, Dale, some of the things you're doing today outside the coaching realm.
Well, still teaching and coaching, like you said, there at Indian Hill High School, and got this little part-time gig working college basketball games mostly. Usually get about 20 games a year and a couple college football games where work as a statistician. And my actual role is I'm communicating statistics to the people that sit outside in the trucks and put all the graphics up on TV for you. So, if a kid's going to the foul line and you see they throw his statistics up on the board or up on the TV screen while he's shooting those free throws, that's the kind of thing that I'm conveying to the people that are doing all the graphic work out in the trucks. But, it's been so much fun. I mean, I've worked Kentucky-Louisville games and UC Xavier games, and it's what I enjoy, basketball. It's my game. It's my first love. And now just to pick up this little side thing and it's a hobby. But, you make a couple of dollars for it, too. So, and you get to sit at half court, right there in mid-court. I've heard Calipari scream, yell, and cuss at his players and coaches. I've heard Cronin do it. I've heard them all do it because they're usually standing right in front of me. But it's been a real nice, fun, enjoyable thing to do as I get closer to retirement from teaching.
That does sound like a lot of fun. It made a lot of people jealous. So you're the guy whispering in their ear and putting up the graphics. So you're the guy responsible for when somebody says, they haven't missed a free throw in 4 years and then they miss one. You're the guy helping
exactly.
Put on the okay.
Yeah, you're right. But sometimes if you make a mistake and they put the wrong graphic up there, 9 out of 10 people don't know it's wrong anyway, so what the hell.
That's given a mantra on our radio cast. Nobody's watching, so we don't have to worry about it. Well, let's talk a little bit about the game you've known for many, many years. Like I say, you graduated from high school in 1972, and your last year of collegiate play was 77. So we're going to ask you a few questions here about, as I put it, the game now and then. Talk a little bit about how you were recruited back then, because I'm sure it's very, very different from what's going on now.
Oh, definitely different. First of all, back in our day, you didn't have AAU teams for, well, now it goes all the way down to 8-year-olds, I believe. Back then, an AAU team was for men who did not go on to college and play, or they were in the service, or they were just gotten out of the service and they still enjoyed playing basketball. So the AAU teams back then were 20 to 25, maybe up to 30-year-old men that would travel to different cities in the Midwest area and play basketball. Those AAU programs now are obviously, at all age levels, and they have tournaments all over the country, and these kids play year-round now, and that's when a lot of the college coaches go recruit. They go watch a couple of hundred kids at one tournament in Florida or Las Vegas or wherever it might be. But back when I was playing, the coaches learned of you basically through the newspapers. They would subscribe to, and I remember talking to college coaches, and they said, we get a newspaper from every major city within hundreds of miles of our university. And when they would see a name in there, Haarman, 26-point night or something like that, you got a letter. They just shot letters to you left and right. I mean, got hundreds of letters from college coaches telling me they were interested in me, even though they had never met me and they had never seen me at all. But that's how they initiated the contact with you. If they followed you through the newspaper, and of course they would start to make phone calls to friends of theirs that maybe lived in the area. Hey, tell me about this kid. Tell me about that one. Is he 6'5"? Is he 6'2"? Or whatever it might be. If you got a visit while you were at practice, an assistant coach from IU or Xavier or whoever walked into your gymnasium to watch you play, that's when you started thinking, okay, somebody's interested in me a little bit. I think now there's this perception that with the internet and social media that if there's any contact between a high school kid and a college coach, it's deemed as they want me. They're interested in me. In reality, they're really not yet. That's just the contact that they make nowadays. But I always felt like a school was really interested in me when I got the personal phone call from a coach. And he called me in the evening, and we talked about basketball. That's when you really felt like they were recruiting you, as opposed to the way it might be today. It was more of a. I can't imagine the hours that these college coaches had to take, where they were in their car for hours driving to different schools, watching a kid play on a Friday night, going somewhere else and watching them play on Saturday. But that's how they had to recruit back then. They just did it that way. You didn't send in game tapes or anything like that. They had to just get in their car and drive and go see you play.
So how does somebody like you from a very small school in Cincinnati get on the radar of a program like Mississippi State?
I think it basically just started with the fact that I scored a lot of points. So naturally my name's in the paper, a lot there. There was an assistant coach at Mississippi State. His name was, last name was McKenzie, and I'm drawing a blank on his first name. But Coach McKenzie was an assistant, like I said, at Mississippi State. He had a relative that lived in this area. I really don't remember if it was a brother or a cousin or whatever it was, and I think he made the phone call to him. Hey, can you tell me about the Haarman kid at St. Bernard? Can he play? yeah, I think you need to come up here and watch him, that type of a thing. And I think that's the way a lot of it was done back then. College coaches have been around. A lot of them are well-traveled, and most of them don't go one place and stay there. So they have a lot of connections in different cities, whether it's now through the social media or back then they just picked up the phone and called people. But I think they relied on friends of theirs, relatives of theirs, to at least get some type of an initial contact going. And that's the way it must have been here, because I know his name was Larry McKenzie. I just thought of it. But he had a relative that lived in this area that I think tipped him off on me a little bit, said, hey, you might want to come up and see this kid play. So that's how it all started.
Well, you went on down to Mississippi State, but then decided to return to Cincinnati. What sort of influenced you to make the decision to come back and play for the Muskies?
My freshman year down there, this is when they still had freshman teams too. I believe it might have been the last year that they had freshman teams. And I had a nice year. I was very happy, with not only my own development, but I enjoyed my teammates and coaches and everything. Moving back or transferring back closer to home, or right here at home, St. Bernard and Xavier is only like 2.5 miles away from each other, was more of a personal decision. My mother was ill at the time, cancer, but to this day she's a 36-year cancer survivor, so hallelujah. But there was just something, even though my dad would say, you don't need to be here, we're fine, your mom will be okay, I just wanted to be closer to home. I was starting to think about being away, my mom being ill, and it just didn't seem right that I was 600 miles away while my mom was ill. I found myself starting to just kind of maybe just lose a little focus with the game. I found myself academically just kind of going through the motions, and instead of getting the A's and the B's, I was starting to get the B's and the C's, and, I didn't want that because I didn't really believe I was going to the NBA, so I needed to graduate and get a degree. So it was more of away from basketball. It wasn't like a transfer that said, I can't believe I'm not getting to play. This isn't fair. I'll go somewhere else and play, and I'll show them. It wasn't really that. It was more just the personal side of things. And really, by going to Xavier, it turned out to be probably one of the best decisions I ever made, without a doubt.
They had two great years at the end. A couple of things here that you can cover together that I wrote to you about. One is, how did you keep yourself in shape? Things have changed so much in the past 40 years with summer leagues and, like I said, the AAU and nutritionalists and specialization. We'll talk about that again. But, talk about how that was different, keeping yourself ready, and how the game itself was different in the 70s as what you see today.
The way we stayed in shape back then playing is we played all the time. And what I mean by that is we went to local parks and just played. We just enjoyed going to the park wherever it was you lived. And I can remember through like junior, senior year in high school, one night we might play at a park in Reading on Monday. Tuesday we were at Laughlin. Wednesday everybody came to St. Bernard, and we just kind of got friendships going with people from other schools, players from other schools, and we just, hey, you come to our place tomorrow night, we'll go to your place the next night, and we just played and played and played. I believe it was my senior year, and then getting into my college years, it was not uncommon at all to go to Xavier's old Schmidt Fieldhouse and play a couple of nights, and college guys would come in there from everywhere, from Dayton, from UC and Xavier. We'd go over to the old Armory Fieldhouse at UC and play. But what I'm getting at is I don't remember too many days waking up and thinking, I got to go shoot so many shots. I got to make this. I got to do this. I got to do that. We just enjoyed it. I just enjoyed going. I couldn't wait to just go play and challenge myself against somebody else, somebody that I really didn't know, but they were 2 years older than me, and they were a little bigger and a little stronger. And I don't know, I really took a very mental approach to the game because, I wasn't the fastest guy, so I know I wasn't going to beat people with my speed, but I felt like I could outsmart them if I just kept learning the game and studying the game as much as I could. There were times we played at Armory Fieldhouse and Oscar Robertson was on the court. It was right at the end of his career. You're sitting there going, oh, my God, there's the best player in the world out there if we're playing against him. But, we just played a lot. We found the best competition that we could always play. Weightlifting was out. Not many guys lifted weights because it was bad for your shot. I mean, that was the philosophy back then. You're going to get too tight and won't be able to shoot the basketball. But, and then to get to your other part about playing multiple sports, it drives me crazy as a high school teacher and a coach I'm always talking to kids when, like say, a soccer player. I say, what else do you play? Oh, nothing. I play club soccer. And I go, well, let's try a second sport. And usually I get an answer like, well, I can't, because if I do, my coach might not let me on the team next year, or I won't develop good enough to make the team. There's too much pressure on kids to specialize. Let's face it. What's the percentage of kids that go from high school to college? That percentage, and then let alone from college to the next level after that, it's very, very, very small. And I've even talked to parents about, have your kid play a second sport. They'll get away from the number one sport. It's good for peace of mind, and it's always good to get away from your main game for a little bit of time. And a lot of parents even agree with it, but they still don't follow through with it and maybe let their kid play a second sport. That's how it's changed. I remember here in the NFL, all the number one draft choices the last couple of years, 85% of them played a second sport. Now, you tell that to moms and dads, and you think you'll win them over. But it's just not that easy anymore. It just doesn't happen for some reason. And I don't know. I wouldn't have traded it for anything. I looked at my own son, who was a good high school basketball player. He wasn't great or anything, but he was good. And in his senior year, he decided to play soccer and run track. And he'll tell you to this day that's the best decision I ever made. Just getting involved with different sports, different people, and different coaches. But that's something I don't know if that's going to change or not. I think maybe the days of the specialization might be here to stay. I don't know.
Well,
I hope not, but I think they may be.
That's for sure. Big business, and we'll come in. One of the questions that Sarah will leave to wrap up with is remember, let's get to your time at Xavier here then. Couple of things. You talked about the reason you came back, and for those of you who know your Cincinnati history, when Dale's talking about the people on the playgrounds, this is the era of the Grody boys at Elder, the won back-to-back state championships.
Right.
Sylvester's at Moeller, and one of them went on to the Grodys. I think one or both of them went on to Michigan and ended up in a final game, and Sylvester.
Steve went on to Michigan and played in the final game. That's the year Indiana went undefeated in 1976, I believe it was. Yeah, he was a starting guard on that Michigan team. Had Indiana down at halftime by about 10, but lost at the end. Yeah.
And Mike Sylvester.
My years at Xavier were great. I mean, I enjoyed it. Like I said, academically, I got back on track, and I enjoyed going to school there. I love the small school atmosphere. The one thing that it's kind of my junior year when we went 14-12, it was a big deal at the time, believe it or not, because I believe the last winning season prior to that was like 1963. I believe it was like 12 or 13 years since Xavier had a winning team. So I can remember we got down to the last couple of games. We were like 13-11. We had Duquesne coming in. And then we had Marquette coming in behind that, and somebody was asking me a reporter asked me what I thought about Duquesne. Can you get the winning season? I said we better beat Duquesne tonight because we're not going to beat Marquette. Marquette was that's the year they were national champions, 1977. So we did get by, Duquesne and pushed our record. What would it be, 14-11, and then lost to Marquette. But at the time, we were really pumped about it and really excited about it, and took a lot of pride in getting that record. It was fun, But it turned out to be just a wonderful place for me to go to school. And I've told many people they do it the right way over there. They do it the right way. You go to school, and I really believe that the university cares as much as you can possibly care about their student athletes. I think they do a wonderful job with their student athletes, and it's
that's
very proud to be a part of it. Yeah.
Be a big thing. Jim and I are both Xavier grads as well, for graduate school. But something that you bring up a good point, and I put later. We'll talk about it in one of the follow-up questions. Is Xavier only went to the NCAA once before Bob Stack came a few years after you retired, and now there are people. We're sitting there talking about whether or not they're going to make it. So it was a big thing just to have a winning record. But another aspect of it was Xavier was an independent.
Right.
There's no conference or league championship to shoot for you. What were the goals for the season when you did that? Who were the big rivals? Who were the games you got up for when just every game's every game and it doesn't go into the standings?
It's almost like the independents were a league of themselves. That's kind of the way we looked at it. There was Xavier in St. Louis and Detroit, Creighton, Notre Dame, Marquette, Dayton. They were all independents. We all kind of looked at ourselves in a way as a conference ourselves, as we played each other all the time. But, obviously back in those days, there weren't 68 teams going to the tournament. You're talking 24 or maybe it was 32 at the time. I don't remember exactly. And if I'm not mistaken, you had to win your conference to go. Like in the ACC, you had to win your conference to go because they had very few at-large bids that went after that. So there were many teams like those famous UCLA teams that won. The second-place team, Southern Cal, there were years where they were 24-2. They didn't even get to go. But we kind of just told ourselves if we are going to go to the NCAA tournament, which I think we all realized where we were as a team and our level of talent we had compared to those powerhouse teams, we knew that was going to be a big stretch if we were going to get that far. But going into my senior year, we were thinking maybe the NIT. Maybe instead of, we're 14-12, maybe we go 18 and whatever. The following year we get picked for the NIT. But things didn't go well that year. We just had a difficult time just getting on the same page for whatever reason. And the season kind of, you're watching Xavier lose 3 in a row. Well, we didn't have the talent to stay in there and keep competing and keep winning games. When we lost 3 or 4 in a row, it turned into 5, 6, or 7 in a row. We just didn't have that talent to compete with some of those schools like that. But it was a fun time, though. It was a fun time. I really, really enjoyed it a lot. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And like I said many, many times, it was one of the best decisions I ever made was transferring back to Xavier. I really think the world of what they did for me.
Well, you bring up a neat point there that there was sort of league of independence, and it's not like you're playing marshmallows. I mean, your junior year,
no.
You played Notre Dame, and it was 15 at the time, Marquette when they were 3, and then later in the year when they were number 12, Cincinnati when they were number 13. And your senior year, you played a number 19 Tennessee, number 16 Maryland, Marquette number 8. Like you say, they were the NCAA champions your senior year. A Detroit team that was 20th. Cincinnati was number 10. Detroit again when they were 16th. So I mean,
that Detroit team was Dickie V was their coach then. Dickie Basketball. Yeah, he was. But yeah, you're right. I believe somewhere in one of my scrapbooks I got laying around somewhere, I got a little article that said our schedule was the strength of schedule they called it was like number 15 in the country. And when you look at, we played some cupcakes. There's a couple on there at cupcakes, but then the other ones are just so darn good for us. And it was a fun schedule to play, even though we would get blasted a couple of times. Like going to Marquette, playing the national champions was fun. It was a good time to go up there in front of 15,000 people and play. And those are the opportunities that Xavier gave us back then.
You probably played at the Mecca, didn't you?
It was. No, I'll tell you what it was. It was called the Milwaukee Arena, and it was like the Cincinnati Gardens. It was just that type of a place. Just that type of a place.
You know what that place is called today? That's the Al McGuire Center now.
The Al McGuire Center, okay.
That's where they have PE.
But that's where we played.
Well, I know Jim also jumped in because he's just dying to ask you this question about a certain Notre Dame game that he was.
Well, one more question on just what you were talking about there. Again, I came to Cincinnati in the mid-'80s, but I've studied a lot of history about Xavier, except, again, the 1970s is not something there's a lot written about. But, they quit football in 1973, right?
That's right.
And wasn't there a discussion going around and almost like a group that was almost to the point where they wanted to really de-emphasize athletics and maybe even move basketball down to like Division III, NAIA, and be more of an academic institution and not and then of course, then the decision was made when they brought in Bob Stack that no, basketball is going to be important and we're going to focus on it and help it be a springboard for the academics and the national name of the school. But you were there during that time. You might have heard some of those discussions.
Well, I didn't just hear it. I was very much involved with it. I'm glad you brought that up because my senior year, like I said, we didn't do very well. And, you know, we never drew 10,000 people anyway, but attendance was going down. Just the whole interest in basketball or athletics at the university were starting to drop really bad. As the captain of the team, I can remember it like it was yesterday, very shortly after our last regular season game, I was asked to come in and meet with the, I guess they just call it the athletic council or whatever, made up of a couple of, you know, faculty members, a couple of students, the athletic director, Jim McCafferty, and a few other people like that, where they, you know, their committee for athletics. And I remember them asking me the same exact questions that you're asking me like that. And I remember just thinking, oh, my gosh, don't take away this opportunity for so many people to come to college. I mean, there are people out there, they don't go to college unless they can, you know, get there through athletics or whatever it might be. But I remember saying, oh, you know, don't give up on it now. Don't give up on it now. I said there's a lot of schools out there that are very similar to Xavier, and we were thinking of like Dayton and Marquette off the top of our head. They're very similar to Xavier. They've got solid athletic programs, and it's a great way to promote your university and, you know, just the Xavier name being around the country the way it is now compared to what it was 25, 30 years ago or whatever it might be is so much nicer. But I just remember saying, God, I hope you don't do that. I said, I don't know what your financial situation is. I have no idea. I'm just a kid. But I said, if there's any way you can get into a conference so that guys have something they can see their standings in the paper every day, and it'll motivate them to want to win a championship. I just felt like I hope they listened to me. I'm not saying they hired Bob Stack because of me, but I'm just saying that I really it really hurt when they were even brought up the idea of de-emphasizing, you know, basketball like that. Because I can't imagine what the university would be like now if they didn't have the success they do athletically. I mean, I'm not saying the university would fold up, and we know that, but my gosh,
I can tell you, it would be Thomas More, Mount St. Joe. Great schools.
Exactly.
But
I think you're right.
But somebody in California has never heard of them.
You're right. You're exactly right. I think that's a good point. It would be very similar to like a Thomas More. Yeah, it would be, you know. And it's obviously shown. But I hired Bob Stack, you know, that was a great move. But along with hiring him, they got into a conference, and that brings some financial stability to all the schools that are in that conference, you know. And the TV contracts weren't as good as they are now. We know that, but there's some money pumped in there a little bit. The coach's radio show, there's some money pumped into that. So the finances started to flow a little bit, and you know, they got back on their feet. You know, which obviously we can look at what they're doing these last few years, and they made a good decision. They definitely.
Well, and you bring up a point that we mentioned before, Dale. You know that they weren't having a lot of success, and you're part of the only winning team since 1964. That team was 16-10. But since 1981, Xavier's only had one losing season. So whatever you said to the athletic council, we're glad you did, because it's made a big difference.
Well, I remember pounding my fist, and I said, no, you can't. No, you can't. No, I just gave him my 2 cents worth.
Well, that fiery personality leads us right back into the question that I know Jim's just dying to ask you. So I'll turn it back over to Jim, who is a northern Indiana boy and can talk all things Indiana basketball. And I believe he has a question to ask about a certain game.
Well, yeah, I did a little research and just did you know, you got to be careful when you do a Google search on anybody this day and age, what's going to come up.
Isn't that the truth?
And I don't know if you know this, but if you do your name, this story was like second on your list. It was January 17th, 1976, and the story was something about you're playing the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and they were going to walk off the floor and forfeit the game. And I started reading this, and lo and behold, in the middle of it, it was you and Bruce Flowers had gotten into a swinging match, is actually what the reporter, and you told the story earlier. I guess that's the way you said it was too. But it sounded like you guys had just, I thought, man, I started thinking, man, who are we going to talk to tonight? This guy must be bad.
I know. Can I claim this as fake news? You know, I mean, come on.
There you go.
Come on. Fake news.
Actually,
come on. Who's going to believe everything they read?
We'll let you tell the story. But the other thing I thought about too, you got to play against some very good Marquette players, some nationally known, some that Jeff and I watched on TV as they went to the national championship, I think, in '74 and actually won it in '77.
Right.
So you could probably talk about some of them. And then actually, did you play against Adrian Dantley then at Notre Dame too?
Yes, I did. I played against Adrian Dantley.
He was probably my favorite college player growing up as a kid because I lived 20 minutes from the campus and they were my team back then.
He was just his technique with his footwork, his the way he's a big, strong. He was only 6'5", but he was powerful, and he didn't sky over people, but he knew how to position his body, how to get you up in the air, and just do all the little things it takes to be real successful like he is. But you're right, those Marquette teams, Bo Ellis, Butch Ellis, a national player of the year, Jerome Whitehead, I can't, a couple other ones, but my gosh, were they good. And we used to say suicide is like getting trapped in the corner in a Marquette game. You might as well just kill yourself because you just get it over with, because you couldn't see anything. These 6'9", 6'10" guys waving their arms around. But Notre Dame was with Adrian Dantley, and you're right, with the game that you're talking about where Bruce Flowers and I had the altercation, Adrian Dantley, I believe, had about 35 in that game, and I think they beat us by about 12. We actually played a pretty good game, but getting to the incident, which I don't cover up, I'm going to tell you how it was. It was, and really, I mean, because I played with a very fiery temper, and I can remember late in my senior year in high school, my dad and mom, they came to every ball game, and my dad was a real quiet, easygoing guy, and he just tapped me on the shoulder after a ball game one time in high school, and he says, "You need to calm down. You're starting to embarrass your mother." And I just said, "Oh boy, time to slow down a little bit here." It was his way of telling me I've had enough, that kind of thing. But anyway, what I'm getting at is, in that game, the Notre Dame game, obviously we're pumped. We're playing one of the top teams in the nation. Got them at the Gardens, and we're playing a pretty good game. And there was a play where the ball goes toward the Xavier bench, and Bruce Flowers and I chase it down, and we both popped up, just kind of swinging at each other, like chicken fighting. It wasn't like big roundhouses or anything like that. And, of course, guys are pulling me back, and they're pulling him back, even though neither one of us really had any intent of going any farther with it. It just was like, when I think back, it was just like a reaction. He's going to hit me, so I hit him first, or whatever it was. And I think Digger exaggerated a little bit about pulling his team off the floor, because this wasn't like Ron Artest going up into the crowd, or anything like that. But the funny thing, and I was saying earlier, is two things. One, I mentioned earlier, my grandmother called me from Florida and said, "Very disappointed in you." I got all my friends together to watch my grandson play, and she teased me a little bit about it. And then the second thing is, we each got a technical foul. Each team shot a technical foul at each end of the floor, the way the rules were back then. And then you went to center court for a jump ball. Bruce Flowers and I walk out. We just happened to line up on we weren't in the circle jumping, and we were just around the circle, lined up next to each other, kind of tapped each other on the hip like, "Hey, I'm cool." "Yeah, me too." "Hey, we'll be all right. Sorry about that, man." "Yeah, okay, fine." Referee steps in and he literally looks and goes, "What are you two doing?" "Well, we're fine. We're okay. There's no problem here. I'm okay. Bruce and I are fine. We're fine." "No, get off the floor. You two are out of the game." And I remember looking at him going, "No, we're okay." I actually told the ref after he told me I was out of the game, I said, "No, we're okay," like he was going to change his mind or something, like that. But we laughed about it the next year, because we went to Notre Dame the next year and played them up there, and the one Bruce and I, got together after the game, talked a lot, and we had no hard feeling. We didn't even know each other that well, but we kind of laughed about it a little bit, even though we were both embarrassed about what we did. But those things just had, and that was my temper that I used to play with. I was one of those guys where if I made a real nice move and I drew a foul on somebody, but I didn't get the call, when I was still pretty immature, I used to think I was getting cheated. This isn't fair. I just made a great move and a kid fouled me and you didn't call it. That's not fair. Obviously, I grew up a little bit. It probably just took me a little bit longer than some other guys. I don't know, but my temper is what motivated me a lot of times too. While I would have a little bit of a temper, I could focus and say, now I'm going to go get this guy. I'm going to beat him. I'm going to make a move here. I'm going to make a move there. I'm going to draw a foul. I kind of used it to my advantage a lot of times too, even though that one time I didn't. But that's the truth. That's the truth on that Notre Dame story.
Well, it's got to be one of your best stories to tell. But overall, before we get to today's team, what's your favorite memory from your time at X, on or off the court?
Favorite time at X? Well, gosh, it's hard to pinpoint one. I guess I go back to, and it sounds a little corny, I just enjoyed being there. I mean, it was just I went to small school, high school, St. Bernard, so small school Xavier really fit me real well. I did got a lot of joy when we beat Duquesne that late in my junior year and got that winning record for us. That probably, I didn't really think about it closely. That was a highlight. I think I had a pretty good game individually myself. Duquesne had Norm Nixon on that team. He turned out to be a pretty nice player. And we took a lot of pride in getting that winning record. We had Joe Sunderman and Mike Plunkett was on that team and guys like that. And that probably was like a highlight, at that time, I think. It was nice. Yeah.
It is nice to be able to bring home a winning record. Let's talk a little bit about the game we did in the earlier part of the program and got your thoughts. I know the last time I got a chance to see you is we were exiting a Xavier game. So what do you think of this team that Coach Mack's got on the floor right now?
I feel for him. I think Coach Mack, I just got a feeling he's beating himself up more than he should. When you really think about the fact that you're counting on Sumner and he's hurt, Blewett has been playing phenomenal, then he gets hurt. Miles Davis had his situation. Even losing Jalen Reynolds, who had another year of eligibility. I understand why he left. He graduated. He wanted to go to Europe and make some money and play. But there's four guys that they might have been counting on. That's four guys in a starting lineup right there that aren't playing now. Blewett obviously is going to be back, but they're going to be okay. Obviously you got to get healthy. I do like the way some of the guys are getting opportunities now, like Jones and Gooden. They're getting opportunities, and they're showing flashes of what they may be able to give the team in the future. I think some of the guys are putting a little more pressure on themselves than they need to. I think I mentioned, I always mention McCure, and I love the way he plays. I just love the heart that he plays with, and I think he may feel like he's got to do a little bit more than he should. But I think they're going to be okay. They're coachable.
I'll interject. I'm watching them right now. Trayvon Blewett's playing. They're ahead 2016 in the first half at Seton Hall. So things are okay.
Well, yeah, they'll be
Blewett
fine.
just hit a three, so
they'll be okay. But it's the turnover. And here's another situation. Do we have this program now at a point where our guy's going to play a year or two and go to Europe? Or are we going to get the kid that plays one or two and goes to the NBA? Is it the Scruggs kid coming in next year? Is he a one and done? I don't know. But we got better problems now than we used to have in the program. and the problems they have now are okay. Who do I play in the middle, Gaston, Jones, or O'Mara? Well, that's not a bad problem to have when you got three guys that can go in there on any given night and have a good game. They've struggled at times, but they're doing okay. Yeah. I'd like to see him take that 1-3-1 zone. I love that 1-3-1 zone that he does play. And who am I to criticize? And I'm not criticizing, but I just think sometimes he gets stretched out too far. I think they get stretched out too far on the floor, and they open up gaps too much. And Seton Hall, they got some players that can fire that ball. They got about three guys averaging 15, 16 points or more. I'd like to see them just compact that a little bit more, but Chris McMillan knows more about it than I do. That's for sure.
Well, go ahead, Jim.
So besides, you mentioned Joe Sunderman, are you in contact with the program at all? Any special access you have? Any other players or coaches that you keep contact, or are you just a regular fan like Jeff and I now?
Well, I'm a fan. I don't miss a game on TV, and I try to get down to as many games as I can. I enjoy the games. I love the atmosphere of the Centos Center. Stay in contact with Joe Sunderman. There was a guy on our team named Mike McCall back in the day who was a real good personal friend of mine, Mark Brinkman. These guys, I think Mark was a walk-on, but real good friends. Stan McCoy was a guard we had on that team. He lives in the Loveland area, and stay in contact with him. We've actually gotten together and had like reunions like every 5 years for the last maybe 20 years, and we usually go down to the boathouse and just reminisce about how everything was the coach's fault and not ours, And so, yeah, a lot of those guys. The guy that played a little before me, Jerry Foley, was on. Nick, you remember getting names maybe like Nick Daniels, Steve Spivery. Guys like that played. They were from Hughes High School, and we don't see each other on a daily basis, of course, but always good to see these guys. We became pretty good friends. We really have, and it was a nice group of guys to play ball with. My coach, Tay Baker. My coach, Tay Baker. I got to mention Tay Baker. Tay Baker, the only guy to coach at UC and Xavier, and basketball coach at both places. And he's Tay's in his upper 80s right now, and ran into him a couple of years ago. And it was funny because he immediately was talking about, he was like apologizing. And I said, well, I don't understand, Coach. He said, when I got there in 74, they promised me a conference. They said we'd be moving our games to the Gardens right away, but they never got off their butts and did any of this stuff. And he felt bad for us for not. And I said, Coach, it's fine. I got to travel all over the place and play all these different arenas and different cities. I got a great education. You did me well. Don't worry about it. So, but it was funny how he immediately felt bad that we weren't more successful. Not him, but he felt that way about us. I thought that was a sign of a good man with good character.
Since I brought the fight up in my research, and I got to bring up another thing I found on you. I want you to talk a little about, because it sounded like a great story, and it sounded like you maybe should write a book about this. The time you took Indian Hill to the state finals, and the article was talking about how there was no expectation that was just going to be. There was a lot of guys that hadn't played before. You lost some stars, and all of a sudden you're in the Final Four, and you're kind of like, how did I get here? It must have been an exciting time and some great stories out of that season.
I had a group of guys that year who let me put it this way. It was the most enjoyable season, but it was also very difficult. And what I mean by that, I had a group of boys who did everything hard. I mean, they were aggressive with everything they did, everything they said. They weren't shy about anything. And they pushed me, they pushed their teachers, but they didn't take no for an answer. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But they were so aggressive in their play that it got to a certain point where we just decided, and Stan Kimbrough, the Xavier was one of my assistant coaches too on that team. Just thought I'd mention that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we just decided we got to let these guys go. We're holding them back. Let's let them go. And we opened up the floor and just took off running and pressing and just doing everything you could. And had those moments, like I said, because of their personalities where we might throw it away 5 or 6 times in a row, but they were relentless. They just didn't stop. And, we started out slow, but just kept building, and the momentum just went through the roof. Our regional championship game, we beat Dayton Christian by a score of 93-86 in regulation time. I mean, that was a high school game, but it was just, and this team that we beat they were number 1 in the state. They only had 1 loss or something like that when we played them. And everybody playing them up to that point before us was trying to stall them, beat them. You know, they were trying to make it a 35-30 game because they were just so darn good. And the guy asked me, he said, how do you think you're going to be able to hold the ball against Dayton? It was Dayton Christian tomorrow night. And I said, we can't hold the ball. He said, well, how do you expect to win? I said, we can't hold the ball. I'm not saying we're not going to. We can't. We are not capable of holding the ball. We're going to shoot it. We're going to run. Because my whole thought was we beat them up the floor against their press. If we get it to half court, when you get to half court against the press, usually it's 3-on-2 if you turn around. Well, why should I pull it back out and play them 5-on-5? But it was a very rewarding year. Like I said, our expectations were to battle for the conference championship, be in the mix there. We finished third behind Madeira and Marymount or Wyoming, I believe it was. I forget exactly. But, you know, got to the tournament, and, you know, we thought we could win this, we could win that, a couple games, and just took it, like they say, one game at a time. And usually teams that go far like that, they just get on a roll. They just get on a roll, and everything seems to click, and that's exactly what happened for us. But that was rewarding. That was fun. That was really fun.
Sure it was. I was reading that, and I thought, man, this is a book. You should probably write a book and maybe make a few bucks off it. It sounded like the schools going crazy. You know, in Indian Hills, you know, it's a very high academic institution, a school. We all know that. They do super well with their test scores and everything, but also have a quality athletic program going too. So it was just one of those years where, especially through the tournament, where every day you came to work, people were buzzing about the team, and you know, who doesn't like to get patted on the back, you know, and go to work? It's nice. Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you. I feel like we could talk for about 3 or 4 more hours, and I'm sure you got all kinds of stories. So, Jeff, I know we're disappointed. I don't have trivia. I do have a trivia question for you. I know I can get you on this.
Think of them on the spot. Hold on to this, Dale. They probably want to get and watch the game. But Jim, he gets asthma going down in the library archives trying to find ways to stump me on the trivia. And he's usually pretty good about it. So
okay.
Just for a second. Maybe you can help.
Stump Jeff.
Do you want your question, Jeff? I got one now.
Go ahead.
So, and I'm not sure of the answer, but I think Dale can help us.
Going to ask me a question.
He's not sure of the answer, but he's never asked a question you don't know the answer to.
That's never stopped
Dale. But I don't know that the answer. So here's the question, just real quick here. In 1998, who beat Indian Hill in the state finals? I know Dale knows the answer.
I do, unfortunately.
Jeff?
I've read that article, and I to be honest with you, I cannot tell. I believe it was the state semis, wasn't it, Dale? Did you go to the final game or the semifinal game?
We got to the final game, lost the final game. Yeah.
I'm sure Dale can help me. I'm going to pull the old Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I'm going to phone a friend. Already on the line. So,
Dale
Haarman, can you help me?
The friend knows it. That was Sparta Highland.
Okay. I read it this morning. I couldn't remember it, so I just had to get a trivia question in there.
It's located probably an hour and a half straight north of Columbus. You know,
but you got to play in St. John's Arena, right?
We got to play in the original St. John's. Yeah, not well, they're the only one, but yeah, and it was the last year because the next year they played in their new arena, and I was happy we got to play in the old one. To me, that's where the tradition was, and yeah, it was fun. It was a blast going there. We had a good time.
Well, as we said, you know, Dale had the pleasure of going to the Final Four as a player and also coaching a team. He does a lot of great things with the kids there at Indian Hill with the track and cross country time. You know, we're so thankful you spent this time a little longer than we thought with such great stories. Like Jim said, we could probably sit here and tell them for a while. You probably want to get down and see the Muskies play the Pirates. Right now they're 25 each with about 6 minutes left. We won't keep you for long, but we thank you so much, Dale, especially a guy that only played 2 seasons with the Muskies. Like I said, a leading scorer in his senior year, only about 240 points short of the 1,000 club if you had a third year and extrapolate We being about
the only individual thing I wish I'd have done. I wish I'd have got a third year there because I might have got a shot at the 1,000-point thing. But it's okay. It's okay.
So, they won't extrapolate you and put you up there at about Dexter Bailey territory and go through
there.
You go.
All right.
Just a couple quick things here. We've got to sign off. For those of you who are listening to us, we'll be back next week with our RazorCast. Join us on Tuesdays for our Trawcast with all things about NCAA baseball. Basketball. Just quickly, a couple things that you just can't forget. It was 37 years today. The miracle on ice for the U.S. Olympic team beat the 4-time repeat champion gold medal Soviet Union, and then went on to win the gold medal in Lake Placid. And for all Cincinnati Reds fans, you'll remember that on this date, 1934, in Bridgewater, South Dakota, a young man named George Anderson joined the world. 35 years later, he would be announced as the manager of the Reds under the headline of Sparky Who. So, for big day.
Hey! I got a history point for you today. And this goes right in with our guests and everything. I heard this on the radio coming home this afternoon, or actually this evening. Today, in 1949, I don't know how many years that is. I wasn't a math teacher. But today, the exact date, 1949, the Cincinnati Gardens opened.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, I used to go over there so many times.
They didn't say what the event was. It probably was a hockey game, but I don't know what.
Or the Ringling, maybe the circus was in town or something. I used to ride my bike over there from St. Bernard, and my buddy and I would ride over there from St. Bernard and park our bikes behind the arena or the garden and bang on the door till somebody let us in, and then we'd sneak in and watch the Royals play. Oh, that was great. Yeah. It was great. Riding our bicycles home like at 10:30 at night,
Great old place. It's going to see its last days here pretty soon, I think.
I know.
They've already cleared it out, and they're getting ready to tear it down. But it had a good history with Xavier. Like I said, the Royals, Bearcats played there for a while. Always a good time with the circus. I'm glad you brought that up. Once again, we're going to thank our guest, Dale Haarman Xavier, great from the 1970s. We appreciate him spending this time, and we appreciate all of you who listen well beyond the normal time of this. But it's some great things to do it, and we'll be back with you next week. And until we do, Jim will let us go with his usual phrase.
Well, I just wanted to say, hey, thanks, Dale. It's nice meeting you on air. I hope to maybe meet you in person sometime, sit down and have a cold one and hear some more stories. But
that'd be great. That'd be great.
We always end it with a little Go Muskies.
Go Muskies.
Go Muskies.